Okay, everybody, so today we're going to finish up with Islam and talk about their structure and basic beliefs. And before we go, this is the center of the Islamic world, if you will. This is a picture of Mecca during pilgrimage time, and all those little dots you see are all people. It's pretty intense. All right, so once again, we have a monotheistic religion, and it is the same God from Judaism to Christianity, and actually in Islam, there is a belief that many of the major religious figures that existed prior to this were considered to be prophets. So in Islam, guys like Jesus and Moses in particular, and along with Abraham, are all considered to be prophets. They just didn't quite get the right stuff. And what's most important is that Muhammad is the prophet of God, that Muhammad brought the message of God to men. Now, someone who worships Islam is called a Muslim, and Muslim means one who has submitted to God. And this is very, very important because this is where you get the praying, a lot of other things, but to truly be part of this religious group, you have to submit to God. And that's why, which we see, not that other religions don't impact your day-to-day life, and we talked about that with like eating kosher and things like that, but Islam is very much involved in people's day-to-day lives because of that concept of it, that you are submitting to God. Now, the key thing of the Holy Book, which I will talk more about in a moment, is the Quran, and that is actually the correct spelling. You might see Koran, which is a more anglicized spelling. This is really how you should spell it. And this is written solely by Muhammad in the messages that he was given by the angel Gabriel. Now, something else that's important are the hadiths. Now, the hadiths are really weird, and that's why a lot of things get kind of often the misinterpretations of Islam. And you'll have an opportunity to ask about questions and stuff like that in class. But the idea is these are commentaries very similar to some of the works that we saw in Judaism, like the Talmud and things like that, that these are commentaries of people that came after Muhammad, and some of them are well sourced and thought out, and others are kind of arbitrary. And what's important to understand is that the hadiths aren't sacred. So what you might think is a belief of Islam because you saw it in a hadith is not necessarily true. Areas of worship, you can either go to a mosque or you worship at home, and depending on where you live, you have clerics and imams for spiritual guidance. Now, the Quran in the basic beliefs is crucial. Now, the Quran is a sacred text. This is written by Muhammad. Now, what you need to understand is that this is directly believed to be the word of God. And in recent years, you've had people like burn the Quran, and then people get wonder, well, why are the Muslims trying to go after them, or why are they so upset? Well, the reason why they're so upset is it is believed that this is the word of God, that this is not like interpretations or something like that, or written after the fact, that these are the actual true words of God. So if you believed in that, that would understandably get you upset. Now, it is a sacred text that is full of ideas from the Bible and the Torah, but also ethic and moral ideas, things that you are supposed to do, things that you're not supposed to do. And we'll talk about that in the 5 pillars in a moment. But what's also important, and this is where this holy book is different than most other holy books, is that they have something in it known as Sharia law, or actual laws for governing a country. Remember, Muhammad was a political leader, which makes him completely different than every other founding religious leader than we've ever had, aside from, say, Abraham, who was a political leader as well. Now, this is crucial because if you look today, there are certain countries that are run by Sharia law. And many of us look at those laws as backwards or, or in some cases brutal. But what we need to understand about it, I'm not saying we have to agree with it, but this is law that comes from a book that was written down 1,500 years ago. And things that applied 1,500 years ago might not apply now. And so there's definitely some controversy there, like a lot of laws entail corporal punishment, things like that. So important to understand. Now, free will, it is important that humans do have free will, and this is, if you make mistakes, it's on you. However, there is the belief in Iblis, who is basically a parallel to Lucifer, or Satan from Christianity, and they're in throughout the Quran. There's a big belief in angels and angels that are involved, in jinns who are evil spirits, and so evil definitely has an incarnation. Probably the stuff that's most confusing or most understood is the attitude toward women, and most people assume that in a Muslim nation that women have no rights. And what you have to understand is that this is true in many cases, that women don't have a lot of rights. If you look at Saudi Arabia, Iran, Afghanistan, are three areas that really are hold true to that. However, if you look in the Quran itself, there's nothing in there about not giving women rights. And also, let's remember, Muhammad was a dedicated father, and fun fact for you now, Muhammad only ever had one child, and it was a daughter. So if he was a dedicated husband and a dedicated father to a daughter, I'm not exactly sure that he would necessarily think, oh, let's just take away all their rights. However, in the Quran, it is stated that women should be modest and they should go out in public and have this idea of modesty. And there's also ideas that men should generally have more power. Now, modesty is a really loaded word. What does that actually mean? To you, it might mean one thing. To me, it might mean something else. And so what has actually started to develop is that when in public, that women should wear a veil or a kimar, which is the head covering that you see most women, Muslim women, wear in public. And believe it or not, this is an idea that comes from all the way back in ancient Mesopotamia. To in Judaism, women were expected to wear a veil like that in public as well. And so it continues on. It's just that in many Muslim nations, it's actually a law. Now, there's also something called the burqa, which many women interpret as they should cover their entire face, head, hands while in public. And I'm sure many of you have seen someone wearing a burqa. Now, what's important in this, except for under certain circumstances, the vast majority in the world, the women who do this is completely voluntary. This is part of their own jihad. Because we talk about jihad as the idea of trying to spread religion before, but also jihad is your personal struggle to submit to God. Because again, a Muslim is one who submits to God. So for many women, wearing the burqa is their way of submitting to God, that they are going to cover themselves outwardly so that they can be more religious, because that is their interpretation of modesty. Now, we have a variety of different issues that come about for this, because many of these nations, men were in charge and they wanted to stay in charge. So what they did is that they used these quote unquote laws or the ideas of modesty to create laws that were against women. Like, for instance, women in Saudi Arabia are not allowed to drive, and there's a variety of other things that limit their power. And so in this case, this is more of, it's not the religion that is actually telling you what you can't do, it's the interpretation of it. But the key aspect of Islam are the five pillars, okay? And you'll be able to ask more questions about Islam in class, but I'm just kind of giving you the introduction. The first pillar of Islam is Shahada, or the profession of faith, that there is one God and one God only, and his true prophet is Muhammad. Real simple, and when you actually see that in Arabic, that's what it looks like. You want to talk about a tough language to learn, good luck on this one. So that's number one. Number two is salat, that you must pray 5 times a day. Basically, right before sunrise, mid-morning, noon, mid-afternoon, and in the evening. And it's really important that you do this. This isn't an option. If you look at most Muslim nations, the nation all but shuts down during prayer time. That there are built-in times to work where you can go and pray. If you look in the United States of America, Muslims will often bring prayer rugs, and I'll show you here. This is a portable prayer rug that a Muslim would keep with them at all times. They keep it in their car, maybe keep it in their office, so that they can pray. And the praying is a variety of standard prayers that they say, as well as their own prayers. And remember the idea of submitting to God by praying 5 times a day. Once again, you are working out his will. And this is something, again, that's not optional. Now, the other is zakat, which is the giving of alms or money to the poor. This is crucial. Okay, this is what you do. and it is expected of you to support all other Muslims. And then you have Sawem, which is fasting during the daylight hours of Ramadan. Now, the Arab calendar is a lunar calendar, which means Sawem or Ramadan does move year to year, but more recently it has been in the summer. And this is for an entire month you fast from sun up to sundown. This is again showing your dedication to God and that you are going to submit to Him. Absolutely crazy, especially in the summertime. Basically, it's customary that you wake up during the day or before sunrise and have a breakfast and then no food or water for the entire day. It really is something, remarkable that one can do. And the last one is the Hajj, which is a pilgrimage to Mecca that you must make at least once in your lifetime. And this is again a picture of Mecca, and there's a variety of other places that you go, but you are expected to do this. We have pictures there, but no non Muslim is allowed. And to give you an idea, you need to have registered with a mosque and prove that you are indeed a Muslim if indeed you want to take this. And this is the holiest site of Islam, and that's why you go there. Now, to go along with that, the number two site in Islam that it's important to know is this is the Mosque of the Prophet in Medina. This is the burial place of Muhammad. He is buried here. We know that because, we have his. His tomb is inside, and so that's the number two place that I want you to know. And then the number three place is the Al Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Now, when Muhammad actually, during his life, his wife and uncle die in quick succession, and Muhammad is a little bit shaken and not sure if he wants to continue. And according to the Quran and the beliefs of Islam, that the angel Gabriel came down and decided to take him to heaven to show him what he was preaching, and that he was taken from Mecca to Jerusalem, interestingly enough, which tells you very important. Jerusalem is important to all religions, and we'll get into that much later. And that he ascended from the Dome of the Rock, which is right here, which is right next to the West Wall, which is over here. And Jesus was crucified actually up in this direction over there, so it's all kind of the same area, and that's where he ascended into heaven, and that is where this mosque is at. And so we'll get a chance to get a little bit more in depth into this class. I want to get lots of questions from you guys, and we'll see and try to again understand these quote unquote Western religions. All right, guys, I'll see you soon, and make sure you have comments and questions ready for class.